Meanwhile, Mahomes had one of the worst games of his career with 3 turnovers, including a pick 6, and was sacked a career high 6 times. All right, which quarterback stock changed more after last night? Was it Hurts or Mahomes, Stephen A?
I think it's Hurts because I think he's just been elevated exponentially. I mean, we look at him totally differently today than we did, you know, as much as 2 weeks ago in this, even before yesterday's game. If the Eagles had lost this game and Jalen Hurts had played relatively pedestrian, he'd have been crucified.
Yep.
There's no way around that, okay? And so for him to perform the way that he performed, we have to look at him totally differently. We have to look at him, and again, I'm not talking about overall talent or whatever, but, you know, he's a winner.
Yeah.
And so when you look at him, Lamar, Josh, Joe, etc., y'all ain't him because he got something done that y'all didn't get done. And we have been talking as if, yo, this dude, Patrick Mahomes, is the roadblock, is the impediment to the success of 3 elite, likely future Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the National Football League who all happen to be in the AFC. And who they couldn't take, Jalen Hurts took down.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts took down. You know, Joe Burrow's a little bit different because he beat Patrick Mahomes in an AFC title game. But then he lost to Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl.
Correct.
And so you just got to look at it differently. Jalen Hurts got it done. And when you look at it from that standpoint, where do you go from there? Yeah. I mean, you have to look at him totally, totally differently and talk about him in an entirely different light. It ain't just about respect on his name. He's a champion and a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
You have to talk about him differently.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. It's Jalen Hurts because he's humming that song now, Not Like Us. Because those other guys, they're not like him and Patrick Mahomes. And so for me, nothing changes the quarterback position. Nothing changes. No other sport, Stephen A. When you win that championship and you're that quarterback and you're that Super Bowl MVP, it's a whole different ball game because you had the ball in your hands 65 times that game. And he was the reason they won the game. Yeah, the defense was outstanding. We're not going to diminish the defense because that was one of the great Super Bowl defensive performances that we've seen in a long time.
I think
absolutely. I would say top 5. And given who it came against. Now, we've seen the other Super Bowl performances, but the quarterbacks wasn't Patrick Mahomes. But it's a no-brainer for me. Patrick Mahomes lost. Okay, he's 3-2. Wow. 3-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time league MVP, 2 5,000-yard seasons, a 50 touchdown. Okay, now maybe we table to talk as GOAT. Right. But we still have him universally regarded as the best quarterback in football. Jalen Hurts gets elevated because now you're going to say now, before he was borderline top 10. Hell, now you might have to look at him and say he's top 5 based on what he was able to do in the 2 biggest moments, NFC Championship game, Super Bowl. It's Jalen Hurts for me, and it's not even close.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I know we love debate on this show and we like to disagree. I don't believe there's a disagreement on this. Patrick Mahomes has accomplished so much that everything as it pertains to his legacy is how will it elevate his legacy. Obviously, the conversation for GOAT is different now because Patrick Mahomes, through the first 7 years of his career, was on a different trajectory than we'd ever seen any quarterback based on individual play and team success. And so not winning this game says, okay, we can't put him at 4 right now. He didn't complete the three-peat, which we'd never seen, which I think would have lifted him to a different stratosphere. But for Jalen Hurts, the narratives were already being set up for why he didn't do it. Not why he couldn't do it, but for why he didn't do it. Everyone coming into the week saying, if the Kansas City Chiefs focus on Saquon Barkley, and if Saquon Barkley doesn't have an Offensive Player of the Year day, then can Jalen Hurts pass them to the Super Bowl? Every question on every morning show is about, can Jalen Hurts pass them to the Super Bowl for the last month? And in the last 2 games of the playoffs, that's exactly what he does. Not only does he pass them there, he leads them there. He's composed in the moments. He's poised in the moments. And watching Jalen Hurts, not only pre-game or pre-week or during the game or after the game, he was no different than he's always seemed. He didn't make this moment bigger than it had to be. He wasn't trying to erase the loss of the past, and it didn't seem like he was trying to prove anything to us. He was doing exactly what he's always done his entire career, whatever it takes to win. And so when you go win a Super Bowl against that quarterback, against that head coach, against that defensive coordinator, it does put you in a different conversation. The same way beating Bill Belichick and Tom Brady put Eli Manning in a different conversation for the rest of his career and pretty soon the rest of his life.
It's Jalen Hurts, and it's not even close. So, one, go back to last year. He had the third most turnovers in football last year with starting quarterbacks right behind, I think, Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen. So that was coming off of the 22 season. And so you have a quarterback that has that remarkable 22 season. And in 23, healthy or not, he just wasn't good last year. And then go to this offseason. And there's a lot of question marks around his, at least publicly, relationship with their head coach, Nick Sirianni. And so there was a lot of unknown going into this year. Go back to September. We end September of this season. He's got more turnovers than touchdowns. He had more interceptions than touchdowns thrown at the end of September. Fast forward 3 or 4 months, and he's in a conversation that, and rightfully so, we put Tom Brady and Joe Burrow in that group. Who could beat Patrick in the playoffs? Who could beat Patrick in the win or go home games? And Jalen Hurts is now in that group. He's now in that group. And Molly, I honestly find your question before pretty spot on. I mean, again, the clutch question. He may not be as talented physically as some other, but clutch-wise, I do think that's a very worthy conversation of, hey, outside of Patrick, who's the most clutch quarterback in football right now? And Jalen Hurts got a lot of evidence for him to be the vote.
Yeah, game on the line. He's not going to cost you the game. Shannon, let me ask you this. Was this one of the worst Super Bowl appearances you've ever seen when we look on the other side by Patrick Mahomes?
It was one of the worst, but hell, did you see Peyton against the Seahawks? Did anybody forget that was Stephen A? I mean,
evidently.
I mean, the first play of the game, it's a safety. Now, how you get the first play of the game and you're like, oh, this thing over? I mean, 48-3. 48-3. It could have been 60-3.
Yeah.
And that was because Pete Carroll is ultra conservative. He's like, hey, we're not gonna put the ball in harm's way. But yeah. And the reason why I ranked the performance that the Eagles did last night, it was who they did it against. Now, I was on the sidelines, and I watched the Baltimore Ravens take the life away from the New York Giants, figuratively, obviously not literally. Go back, if you want to hear a stat line, look at what they did. Punt, interception, punt, fumble, punt, turnover, down. They didn't score. The offense didn't score a point. They got that point on the kick return. I was in the stands, 43-8. I was in the stands, 24-10, Broncos against Carolina. That last night was one of the most impressive performances defensively that you're going to see, considering who they did it against. Well, what made the Eagles, what made Seahawks, it was Peyton. Think about it. That's Peyton, 5 MVPs. He had just won the MVP, Stephen A, that year. Yeah. 55 touchdowns, 5,400 yards, 10 picks. And they did that to him. We know who Patrick is. We know what he is. And the Eagles did that to him.
I think what the Legion of Boom did against Peyton Manning is comparable. Outside of that, to go up against a guy as great as Patrick Mahomes. See, I'm not looking at the final score. I'm looking at the fact that it was 34-0. It was a romp. Yeah. I'm looking at 1 first down in the first half. I'm looking at them going 0 for 6 on third downs. I'm looking at Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins. Nothing. 0 receptions in the first half. It was